question. So pop your questions in, your comments as we go. Now, I just want to tell you, you're fairly early on in this session, you're going to be asked to do a bit of thinking, a bit of designing of intersection upgrades and the like. So don't get yourself too comfortable there. And of course, always look out for Wally. Thanks for hitting record there, Max. That's excellent. Okay, end of this module, we want to delve a little bit further into those kinetic energy thresholds for different crash types at intersections. Have a look at characteristics of intersections that align highly with safe system principles and characteristics of mid-blocks that align highly with safe system principles. So by looking at what aligns highly, we will sort of by default look at what doesn't align highly. And mid-blocks, for those who don't use that term, is just the length of road between intersections. So the first few modules, we really delved into sort of the philosophy of the safe system, the difference between that approach and some traditional approach, had a look at some of those different elements or pillars of the safe system. This one, we're going to focus more onto the infrastructure, the roads and the roadsides and the speeds, which is where this group does most of their work. But let's have just a little chat about what safe system assessments are in amongst the other independent assessments of transport projects. Because road safety audits are something that you've probably heard of. You may have done road safety audits or certainly commissioned them, and they still exist, and they are a really good process for injecting road safety into an infrastructure project. There's also design reviews, independent design reviews. You know, you do a design, you hand it over to somebody else, they check your calculations, they check you're using the right standards and guidelines, they sort of do that independent review of it. Now, there is overlap between a road safety audit and a design review. You are told very, very clearly as a road safety auditor, you're not doing a standards review. It is beyond that, just looking at anything that could result in death or serious injury for road users, be that meeting standards or not, or so, but there are overlaps you often find in those. So there's a good bit of overlap between those. There's certainly lots in the design review that you never look at or pick up in a road safety audit as well. A safe system assessment sort of overlaps in a different way. And there is a lot of similarity between a road safety audit and a safe system assessment, but they have differences. Certainly, there's differences in the way you present a safe system assessment, some of the outputs you'll get, and ideas and thinking. There is, though, certainly quite a bit of overlap there. Then we have this other thing, and it's generally called safety and design. Sometimes it's called different things in different areas, but it's really looking at, can this infrastructure be built safely? Can it be maintained safely? Can it be decommissioned safely? And can you operate it safely? Now, again, it's sort of, there's bits of each of these in safety and safety and design looks at a whole raft of things that are not covered in any of these. Then there's this other one, generally called DDA. DDA audits, it stands for the Disability Discrimination Act, which is an act in different areas, and it's called different things in different areas, but the general principle is something to ensure that all road users of all abilities are able to use the facility. And it also covers buildings and any publicly accessed thing has to have that sort of compliance that people in wheelchairs, vision impaired people can use the facilities. And you see there's a bit of an overlap in some of these, but there's a lot done outside that. So there's just sort of like a general overview to contextualize things for you. Now, Max, tell me, are you seeing an intersection crash on your screen? I'm just seeing something on my screen that's different.
That is, that's up there.
Good, okay. We're ticking along beautifully there. So let's start with intersections. I said intersections and mid-blocks. Let's start with intersections. And we know intersections are a point, there's lots of conflict points being just points that you can crash with another vehicle at. We also often see a spike in run-off road incidents at intersections for a number of factors. First of all, you've got all those conflict points, so there's a lot of people trying to avoid crashes. There's secondary crashes, so there might be a clipping another vehicle and leaving the road. And there's also quite a number of fixed hazards dotted around intersections. It seems to be they're spots on our network where we seem to like to put fixed hazards, power poles, signal pedestals, other fixed hazards congregate around intersections for some obvious reasons, but anyway. So I thought I'd start with this slide from Monash University Accident Research Centre, and from a 4-part series of investigation into how to get intersections to align better with safe system principles. A whole lot of stuff came out of that. But there was this interesting sort of principles of intersection design to get decent alignment with safe system principles. And you'll see at the top there, they're starting with fewer vehicles and fewer intersections. It's a slightly different take on things. But you remember we were talking about exposure, likelihood, and severity. The fewer vehicles and fewer intersections are addressing the exposure to crashes as we think about it from a safe system assessment perspective. The fewer conflict points per intersection, right? This is actually thought of as a likelihood factor in a safe system assessment. So traditionally, I suppose, or depending on who's doing your road safety study, so a lot of people would talk about that as exposure. But you'll see later down the track, in order to never double count risk, that has been drawn out as a likelihood factor. Unless you've eliminated the conflict points, then you still just put it in as a likelihood factor. And then we've got a whole lot of things here about the speeds and angles within biomechanically tolerable levels. So these are back to those charts that we used. And we're talking about generally 90-degree crashes, right angle crashes, less than 50 kilometers an hour. We should be aiming at that, where that can occur. When you can get a bit more angle on that, right? You go back to your year 11 vectors and, we're getting a bit of angle, dissipating energy, bouncing off essentially. We can, tolerate more speed because more of that energy is getting dissipated into the environment. Also, if it's a bit more head-on, we start to engage those wonderful safety features of the vehicle, being the crumple zone, the airbag, the seat belts. And so you get some better outcomes there. There's, as I mentioned last module, there's a fair bit of work being done in, continuing to look at these curves. But for the moment, we're sort of sticking with that. Of course, vulnerable road users, we're talking about that 30 kilometre per hour or below. And in a lot of instances, we do want quite a bit below that. And where you can't meet these above speeds or angle combinations, risk must be reduced to a negligible level. Sort of a generic statement there, but let's explore that a little bit further. So we see there some more angles, and these are passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle crashes, I should say. So car to car, better write that there, just so nobody gets confused with other things. But Generally, we're okay with the energy produced by anything 40 kilometers per hour below. 50 really is the 90-degree angle one. You see there the 60, somewhere around that for these other angles using, well, there is a model out there called XChemX, the kinetic energy management model. But in a safe system assessment, you would never need to go to that precision of trying to analyze the energies involved in a crash. I mean, it's a much more broad brush sort of analysis than that. The 70 kilometers an hour is the sort of head-on rear end, and 80 kilometers an hour. We can't really see it as feasible to an operating intersection at grade unless we accelerate vehicles, because we are really talking here about delta V, the change in velocity. Okay, so if you were able to accelerate a vehicle up and have it merge in, the delta V can be quite low. The change in speed can be quite low. So we can have very high speed crashes at intersections as such that will not result in death or serious injury, at least from the first crash. The secondary crash impacts, we'd need to be very careful about how that's all going to happen. So for new intersections or existing intersections, you can sort of just roughly work out your angles, your speeds, and start to calibrate that back to what we think is generally tolerable. You're not actually going to need to ever go to this sort of precision of detail. You can just sort of generally go, oh, yeah, that's about a right angle. So we're thinking about a 50 kilometer would be good to get speeds down within that sort of level. Just change the color, and then you might go, well, actually, okay, when they get up to the other side, you know, we've got a better angle there. Maybe that's more tolerable around the 60 kilometers an hour for vehicle to vehicle, passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle crashes. So you can see now that we're well beyond what you'd sort of just look in there and look for, you know, sight distance and warning signs and surface of the road and line marking and things like that. Now we're actually into a bit of biomechanics, kinetic energy analysis. And for me, over my career, it's been a shift. Certainly as early in my career doing, working in the regions, doing the crash investigations, the development of road safety programs, the crash reduction studies, those sorts of things, lots of road safety audits and all of that. I was really sort of looking at things from how do we stop these crashes happening? How do we get the signs right and the lines right and everything like that? And I would constantly be, riding or walking or driving around the road network and looking for these things that are going to cause crashes. Jump to now, I spend a lot of my life now walking, riding, driving the road network and just seeing it as potential energy and just how the angles and the speeds and the vulnerability of users are combining, right? By no means are we stopping doing absolutely everything we can to prevent the crash. I mean, that just continues on, and we're even getting, we're getting better at it, and we're doing more things, and we need to analyze that in lots of detail. But the real sort of new frontier is energy management. We've had pockets of really awesome stuff in the past, but it's going to be a really big focus as we continue on forward. And I mentioned their secondary crashes. I mean, there was a study done by Centre for Automotive Safety Research looking at secondary crashes at intersections, trying to understand where they go. And sort of a neat output of their study was, vehicle there, vehicle there. They took a couple of thousand crashes with secondary impacts and reorientated them obviously onto this graph, and they showed that secondary crashes occur out there. Do we need a big expensive study to tell us that? Probably not. but it's there anyway. There are some other ones out, here, and interesting ones which are sort of clip off, hit power poles, and go into the roadsides. But I do think when we look at an intersection, often we are drawn to just focus on that vehicle-to-vehicle crash, or vehicle-to-pedestrian, or vehicle-to-cyclist crash, and we sort of lose sight of the secondary crash impact and the poles and things all around the intersection. So remember those energies, very important, speeds, angles, and thinking about other road users as well. I'm going to give you an exercise now. I said there'd be one nice and early on. Now, Max, tell me, before I start giving this intersection exercise, are there any questions? Does anything need to be covered?
So far, so good. Thank you, Ken. You can hop into the exercise.
Okay. Here we go. Here is an intersection. The intersection. There is a major arterial road going through this, the sort of growth area of a city. The speed limit on the arterial is 70 kilometers per hour, the highway, 70 kilometers per hour. The side road here is 50 kilometers per hour, default speed limit. What else can I tell you about it? 21,000 is the traffic volume, the AADT, and it's got about 10%. I think it's 11% commercial vehicles, large vehicles, trucks. This is a bus stop here. It's a bus route. This is a shared path, pedestrians, cyclists, and down here, probably 300 meters, 400 meters is a school, a primary and secondary school, sort of using the same area and some sports fields. This is a drainage structure. So water sort of goes in there and spills out there. It's all residential area here. What else can I tell you? I'll just jump down. I'll show you some views from the ground. So there you go. You can see it. That's that bus stop I mentioned there. Got a couple of service roads. They're multi-directional service roads. You can see, you can go both ways. Got lighting, trees. Have a look from the other direction. There's that shared path I was saying. There's that drainage structure down there. Go back to here. A little Danish offset crossing here. So that's a Z crossing, it's sometimes called. I call it a Danish offset, where you walk into the inn and then walk along the road and then cross. I would say this one's the wrong way around. You'd want to do it the other way around, so people would walk facing traffic, but they have it looks like they have a structure to deal with and other things maybe. I don't know why they've decided to do that, or maybe they just didn't think about that, but that's not a major issue, I would say, in the scheme of things. So what your exercise is going to be is to eliminate death and serious injury at this intersection going forward. Okay. Now, I'm sort of not too driven by crash history anymore. I like to look at things not being reactive, being proactive, thinking about energy, thinking about possibility. It may have presented itself in crashes. It may not have. I like to just think from a risk perspective, but crashes are still playing a role. And if you've got lots of crashes, you can analyze those and get some intel. But if you don't have any crashes in an area, it does not mean it doesn't have any risk. That's a real misconception, I think, out there, especially with the public, where if there haven't been any crashes, it's not risky. Well, that's not true. It's certainly, there can be risk there. It just hasn't presented itself in death and serious injury. So we are moving to a more proactive stance on that, and New Zealand's got some great thinking around those areas. So I'm not going to delve into that, but there are crashes here for those who are interested in that. They're all passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle crashes, and they are right turn against crashes and emerging crashes coming out like that. And there's been at least 5 serious injuries in the last 5 years. Now, so you're going to eliminate death and serious injury. You're going to get a little bit of time to think and ponder and come up with your ideas and plans. But I am going to constrain you in a few ways. I know you wanted full freedom to do whatever you wanted, but I'm going to give you some real world constraints. Constraint number 1, I'm going to budget limit you. So you've got $3 million to do whatever you want. Okay, 3 million. Now, you may not be somebody who knows the cost of different infrastructure or other things you might want to do. So you have this wonderful cost estimation tool available to you, and that's me or Max, depending on who wants to take a stab at the cost. So if you want to do something, say you go, oh, well, I want to do a grade separated flyover of the highway with an interchange. You could go, how much for a flyover with on and off ramps? And we would instantly write back and say $58.3 million. You can't afford it in your 3 million. We're probably getting it cheap there, aren't we? But we will give you a cost estimate if you need it. But if you've got ideas in your mind, generally how much they cost, just run with that. We're not, it's a just general idea. You got 3 million. The next constraint you've got is we've done a lot of consultation with the community and everybody else, and we've been told we absolutely we cannot close this road. I know you wanted to. Can't close the road. And in fact, we have to leave the ability for vehicles to enter from every direction and exit from every direction. So they've got to be able to, if they're traveling this way, they've got to be able to get in. Traveling this way, they've got to get in. And as they come up here, they've got to be able to go left and right. So that's constraint number 2. The third constraint is that you are operating in the current political, organizational, and community environment in which you currently operate. So if you come up with a, highly radical idea, you may be asked, how are we going to get that through the system? How are we going to convince people to actually do that? Have you got any tricks, any ideas? So I think they're the constraints. So you're going to have a little ponder about it, and you're going to be typing your ideas into the chat. But wait, there's more. Any idea you come up with, I want you to tell us by just putting a letter after the idea. Are you influencing exposure, likelihood, or severity by what you are planning to do? So, you might say, I don't know, I'll think of an example that I'm not going to give away too much. Maybe something that we probably wouldn't do. Build massive fences to stop pedestrians entering the area. Massive fences, block everybody off. You would alter the exposure the crashes because pedestrians could not cross. There were no conflicts with pedestrians. Of course, there's a little bit of ridiculousness to that for many reasons, and of course they will find their way to cross if you do that kind of stuff, but there you go. So you just put an E after that. So you can come up with multiple ideas, multiple things, and we're going to give you a good 3 or 4 minutes here to do it. So you might want to have a stretch as well and fill up your water. We're only half an hour in, but Max, are you all right with that?
Yeah, it sounds good. I just wanted to check in with my cost estimating tool, best practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much is a pedestrian overpass going for this specific environment? This estimating tool?
Yeah, we're going to go $2.2 million to get that in.
Right. And what about, how much would a roundabout cost in this area?
Yeah, so a roundabout to cater for the large vehicles that use this in accordance with the Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 4B, roundabouts. It's a very large roundabout required, and it is going to cost you $9.3 million.
Fantastic. So out of budget for this job?
Yep. For that full-size roundabout. You're going to have to buy a lot of that land and move services and a lot of civil works.
And I might just take this time as well for everyone chucking in some answers in the chat. If you can just change the to everyone, just so everyone within this group can see the answers, because some of the questions are just coming through to Ken and I, and they're just worth sharing with the group. So if you are able to change that, unless it's sensitive, then yes, please encourage you to change to everyone.
Yeah, maybe they are hiding their answers close to their chests.
Maybe.
You know. But yeah, no, good to share, get a bit of that conversation going. So what do we go, 3 minutes from now?
Yep, 3 minutes.
All right. Looks like there was a question might have missed in there. Cost to signalise the intersection. I'm not sure if you answered that, Max. Yeah, signalling. Sorry?
I didn't check with the cost estimating tool, sorry.
Oh, did you answer it?
No, I haven't.
Great. 2 million, 2 to 2.5.
And the volume on the side road as well was another question came through.
Volume on the side roads, about 2,000 vehicles a day. Remember to put in exposure, likelihood, severity. I've been a lot of good answers in there. All right. Wow.
This is one of the more engaged responses we've had, I would say. It's lovely to see all these comments coming through and really, really good answers as well, Ken. Great exercise.
It is good. So how much for a raised platform is in there? Add 400,000 or whatever else you're planning. Other controls installed. Could not see any on the ground level photos. No, it's just passive control. Give way sign. Give way sign there. So no signals or anything like that. I'll just give it another 20 seconds. I'm just loving the ideas coming in and people pondering it. Getting a couple more come in. Likelihood. Okay. All right, Max, I'm going to have to keep moving on. I'm absolutely loving the different ideas that are coming in here. So let me just run through, and I'm not going to be able to sort of talk to everybody's ideas, I could if you've got time to stay with me over the whole weekend, but I think you're going to want to try and wrap this up in the time we allocated. So I'm going to jump through and pick a few things out that have come in, which are really, interesting. The first thing that sort of I noticed there is there's a lot of people that want to put traffic signals at this intersection. Okay, and I dare say that that's some people with some sort of very good understanding of how road networks operate. And there was a great question in there about the volume of traffic on the side road, trying to calibrate what is the best control to put there at here with sort of this unbalanced flow, and people looking at signalization. And most people have correctly identified that signalizing this intersection would influence the likelihood of crashes, and it would reduce the likelihood of crashes. Okay. It's not going to do anything for the severity of crashes or the exposure to crashes. At least the way we think about a safe system assessment, it's not. Okay. Yes, there might be some crashes where people have sort of, they've seen the orange, they've got themselves stuck in the dilemma zone, and they've brake delayed and they've slowed down and they've crashed in the intersection, and it's been lower severity. But what we are sort of honing in on and focusing and looking at is our higher end severity incidents that are going to still occur. And in fact, we see high speed there's nothing there to break up the speed, high speed, red light running, and we see very severe crashes. And not influencing the severity, if anything, might bump it up a little bit, but generally we just call it the same severity of crashes. The exposure is the same because that's the number of vehicles, number of pedestrians, number of cyclists, number of motorcyclists, number of vehicles going through this intersection crossing. Now, if you were thinking, oh, but it's going to change the travel patterns, you know, if we signalize this, more people are going to come out this way. Okay, now you're talking about, yes, correctly exposure factors here, volumes of vehicles. But in a safe system assessment, I just caution you on doing that unless you've got traffic modeling to back that up. It can be very tempting to say, oh, now, pedestrians are going to go off the chart, or all the vehicles are going to come through here, so I'm going to bump up the exposure. We tend to leave it as a like for like, before and after build, unless we get the advice on the modeling or some independent thing to say this is what the latent demand for pedestrian crossing are. We don't try and make that judgment as a safe system assessment. So lots of signalization. Then a few people saying, well, what about reducing the speed limit on the arterial road? And that would influence the, and I do see here multiple different things, but likelihood and severity. And that is correct, yes. So that is going to reduce the chance that a crash happens because a portion of our driving community are going to be going lower speed, hopefully quite a lot of them, and they will have more time to react, more time to evade. But if they do crash, they're going at lower speed, so there's lower energy, so there's lower severity. We had people asking initially about roundabouts and then deciding it was too expensive and abandoning that plan. But I'll talk a little bit about roundabouts shortly. So we've got pedestrian flyovers, so pedestrian bridges and the like, and people saying that that's going to reduce the exposure to crashes. And they're right, because it's going to change the volume of pedestrians that are crossing at grade exposed to the crash type. But I always do caution people on that, thinking that, if we build that, everything's sorted. Absolutely not in most cases. You get some people using it, you get a lot of people still crossing at grade, but we're reducing the amount that are exposed to it. So that's a good one. Had a nice little comment in there about how about using the drainage structure, maybe divert this shared path through here. Wonderful thinking, I say. You don't obviously have enough detail to determine whether that's feasible or not, but I'm a massive fan of using drainage structures for shared paths, cycleways. Often it's tagging onto a bridge, basically under the corner of a bridge or the like, but always a good option to look at because you are then, creating a lot of reduction in the exposure to crashes with a beautiful facility. Obviously, you have to think about a bit of personal safety and lighting and drainage and how it's just going to be managed on the very rare occasion it might be full of water. People get very scared about that. Oh my God, people could drown in there. I'm not going to go in there if it's full of water, and you just make sure you've got a clear management plan for how it works and signage. Anyway, I digress. Good thinking, good thinking. There's people who want to move the bus stop and are mostly rightly saying that that's going to alter the likelihood of crashes. It's not going to change the exposure to crashes because, pedestrian gets off there, crosses the road, pedestrian gets off there, crosses the road. We've got the same exposure to crashes in terms of numbers. It might be less likely if they cross there or the turbulence of, buses pulling in and out. There's a few other things that I just wanted to touch on. So we had some people wanting to raise platforms, raised crossings. Some people didn't define whether they wanted it there or they wanted them here or they wanted the whole intersection raised, but they're identifying that will reduce the severity of crashes mainly, but potentially the likelihood as well, depending. physical separation between cyclists and vehicles. So there's a really good one. Now, it depends how that's done. That could actually be either likelihood or exposure. It's unlikely to influence severity of crashes due to the fact that if somehow the crash still occurs, it's really about the speed that it all happens, not whether there was physical separation or not there to try to lessen the chance it happened, or you can say they're not exposed to it anymore. But you're always a little bit cautious about allocating that into the exposure bucket, especially if we have, I don't know, some wonderful, maybe take the service road or half the service road for this nice separated facility. It's still going to have to cross this, isn't it? So we've still got conflict there with vehicles and cyclists. Wow, amazing. Really great stuff there. I can't go through everything else. I've had a good look through. We didn't see anybody sort of, did I see it? Ask about seagull intersection. So that's where you'd sort of have an acceleration lane in the median, and you'd have that, kind of looks like a seagull. And it's a fun one to ponder under a safe system assessment, because you actually get this acceleration. You see your delta V's down, and you get a reduced kinetic energy, but your likelihood goes up a bit, associated with merging from the right, which is a nasty sort of maneuver to try to do. And if you have an articulated vehicle like a truck or something, there's no ability to do that head check. We know old people really struggle with this. So, you've got increased likelihood. You're still exposed to the speed and that right angle crash. It's an interesting one. But I just point you at the New Zealand work that was done on seagull intersections. And there's a seagull intersection, seagull intersection tool, risk tool available on Wakakatahi website. I use it often. It's lovely. I think that was Shane Turner who came up with that one, but freely available to download with a user manual and all. Wonderful stuff. And Lachlan's also pointing there, awful for PEDs in this environment, absolutely. And so you would be thinking about having to add controls to it if you were going down that track. I'm not a fan of seagulls, and I don't think it would come out that well in this location due to volumes and different things. But I just thought I'd mention that exciting tool that wonderful New Zealanders have produced. All right, I'm going to talk about a few of those things that you've come up with. And Max will tick away at a few things behind the scenes here. So we talked about signalizing, and I mentioned there, that's going to influence the likelihood. It will reduce the likelihood of crashes. We know that. And, we know it's going to be somewhere in that sort of 15% to 45% range, probably, depending on exactly which sort of study you look at and the like. Lots of factors influencing that. But it's going to address that likelihood. And so really we're not sort of achieving our safe system aspirations if we just do that. And we know that there's that just high kinetic energy, potential death and serious injury just sitting there if somebody makes the mistake to run through the red light. And the reality is, and we wish it didn't happen, there is just a lot of people who run red lights, either because they're not concentrating, they've worked a double shift, they're half asleep, a little bit intoxicated, maybe they're intentionally running it. The mechanisms for why they run it are huge. The end result is high energy crashes and death and serious injury. In fact, I just mapped, I could have mapped anywhere. I could have mapped sort of outskirts of Auckland, Hamilton, Wellington, where you've got arterial roads and speeds are up. And this one was actually outskirts of Melbourne, but growth areas and the like, where you've got speeds up and you've got signalized intersections. each of these hotspots is death and serious injury. These are actual people killed and seriously injured. These are all large signalized intersections as well. They're all large signalized intersections. So, we sometimes think of, signalizing as your ultimate form of control, isn't it? Until you can obviously afford to do flyovers and grade separations and the like. But the thing is that it's probably not in a death and serious injury sense. Professor Jeremy Woolley actually made this sort of provocative statement. He said, what did he say? Traffic signals are the biggest failure of traffic engineers. While he was doing a national inquiry. I sort of chuckled. Pretty provocative statement. He means it squarely from the death and serious injury and the sort of thinking that, well, we've provided really good red lights and mast arms, LEDs, they've got to follow the road rules. They've got to stop at the red lights. See, roundabouts, on the other hand, roundabouts are really wonderful from that severity perspective, okay? And this is sort of road safety engineering 101, but, it's always a good reminder for us, isn't it? That the roundabouts, they slow people down, they're more alert, the angles of crashes are better, less conflict points. So many wins with the roundabout. Now I'm talking for passenger vehicles, and I'm going to spend a good chunk of time on pedestrians and cyclists at roundabouts in next module. But passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle in these sorts of environments we're seeing here, far superior in terms of the death and serious injury outcomes due to those factors. But they have to be big. I said, what did I say? 7 million, 7 million. Wouldn't surprise me costing that in the environment you were looking, could cost more. The size, the land take, you've got to get the big vehicle going around it. This is obviously not the same road environment. You would have bought a lot of houses if you had done that. Big swept path of vehicles, and it's, they're very expensive. But what about littler ones? Could we just go little? Nice little, just paint, circle, very different road environment again, isn't it? But this one sort of always gets me scratching my head, thinking, why are we seeing such great road safety benefits out of this one? I mean, we don't have the deflection that we like. We don't have the reverse curves on the approach. Probably speeds of vehicles on some of these legs are going to be quite high due to that. They're going to be moving through. But why is it getting such sort of good road safety benefits? So we see this from, you would call this a mini roundabout. Mini roundabouts all across the UK and different ones that have been tried in other areas around the world. One of the big reasons is that anybody approaching this does not believe they're going to have priority. And that sort of mindset of priority, and again, it's so subconscious, but the mindset of priority means that speeds are high, concentration is down, or being alert to the road environment is down. But as soon as you sort of break it up with this sort of stuff, people come back to reality, they look around, they slow down, they're at least aware and check. There's some amazing things. This is sort of the UK equivalent of the American four-way stop, where, people you don't give anybody priority, everybody slows down, and then there's a bit of who goes first stuff, but hey, it's all happening at low speed. That's wonderful. I think there might be a four-way stop in Palmerston. Is anybody from Palmerston tell me if there's a four-way stop? I just have a recollection of one. Maybe you might remember it. Email me a picture, I'd love it. If you are really worried about those fast straights through small roundabouts, you can do raised and slope it down. But just a reminder there, like conflict points, we're talking passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle. Those dots are just basically points you can crash. And we know that a roundabout does really well in that sense. it's got low conflict points. We know that traffic signals have a lot of conflict points. There you can see. Oh, there's lots. Sorry, I'm just seeing lots of four-way giveaways, and they're all over. Palmerston North, I think, was the only one that I remembered, but that's great. I'm trying to get some in at the moment, and people are not as receptive as they should. Less conflict points. Angle of crash is better. Angle of crash is better, right? And this is the one that I talked about. People are driving along in all sorts of states of consciousness. Yeah, they're half asleep. They've had a fight with their partner, or they're, they've been at their brother's wedding, didn't sleep, partied all the next day, got in the car and drove home. We do not condone this. We are doing lots of things to try to discourage this. But I think from us, in the infrastructure management perspective, we need to start getting our head in the fact that we do not have alert and compliant drivers all the time. And so what can we do to stimulate interaction with the road environment at critical conflict points, like an intersection? And the big roundabout just wakes them up. Back to that guy. Back to reality. Big roundabout, infrastructure in the middle of the road, or some way that the road has told you to wake up a bit. You have to navigate something, do something. You're back, you're looking around for a bit. Maybe then they sort of go back to sleep a bit. We don't want them driving in their state, but we're trying to address to these areas of spiked risk. And just on roundabouts for a bit of fun, not all roundabouts operate the same, as many of you know. We've got, single lane, double lane roundabouts, triple lane roundabouts sometimes, turbo roundabouts. Turbo roundabouts are roundabouts that sort of operate pretty much the same as a single lane roundabout, but they're a double lane roundabout. I'll show you what they are for those who don't know, a bit of fun. You've got a raised separator on the approach. You've got a raised separator through your roundabout. So if you want to do a right turn, you get into that right lane, you go in, you go around, and out you go. You want to do a left turn, you obviously get in the left lane. There's another turbo, and I love this. I love this aerial image just because we've got a truck that's come out, made a mistake, probably pulled out in front of the white van there. Look at the angle on that. And the fact that we know that that's going to be a slow, that vehicle is going slow because it's had to navigate around that, that curve there. So turbos are fun. And this one it's a big turbo. I'll give it that. It's actually a signalized turbo roundabout. It's got signals on the outside of it. This is in the Netherlands, and I flipped the photo so we could, comprehend it. If it was, like this and driving on the right-hand side, it'd boggle our minds too much. But we had a Dutch engineer come over for a while, and we were working with them on cyclists at roundabouts and the like. And I showed this picture, and I said, this one just fascinates me. I've never seen it live, but I'm like, this is amazing. In Australia and New Zealand, we would have these big roads with the volumes that you're talking about here, and we would probably have a signalized intersection. It may have got to the point where we grade separated it, but it's probably going to be a large signalized intersection at the volumes you're talking about through here. And the Dutch engineer sort of looks at me and goes, with speed reduction, yes. I can't do a Dutch accent. And I'm like, no, it'd just be sort of 3 lanes each road, signals. And he goes, with speed, you manage speed. I'm like, no, it'd be 70 or 80 kilometre an hour, 70 kilometre an hour, 80 maybe. He's like, what about all the death and serious injury? He just couldn't comprehend this. I'm like, I know. It's just their practice. He could not fathom that you would ever operate and put your community at that much risk of death and serious injury. And so they would rather, do something this massive, huge land take, and but to slow vehicles down, to improve the angles before they're going, they just wouldn't comprehend leaving that risk out there of just signalized intersections. And it did remind me of a little project. It was a program that we had. This was me back in the day working in the road authority. So I was in the road safety department, and there was a massive congestion easing program that was up and running. So this is about, it was called, so this was in Melbourne, yeah. It was called Keep Melbourne Moving was the program. Some obscene amount of money to do this. And all the infrastructure intersection upgrades were being put through our department for review from a road safety perspective. And basically the program was to rip out roundabouts and replace with traffic signals. Sorry, I'll come back to this crazy design in a second. Not crazy, but I want to see if I can find a memo that we use. So they were expecting us to review, okay, is the phasing right, the line marking right, are they're using LEDs, are they using whatever it is, that sort of stuff. That's what they were expecting us to come back. But we decided to start putting this memo on the projects that ripping out roundabouts, replacing with traffic signals. And I found it here. I kept a copy of it. I thought it tells a good story. Max, are you seeing an inter-office memo there from the Road Safety Department?
I certainly am, yep.
Okay. So this was it. This is the shell memo. The Road Safety Department's analysed this project as increasing crashes as follows. Project life, 20 years. Number of deaths attributed to this project, 2.3. I'll put some real people there. Number of serious injuries attributed to this project, 12.6. Statement of acceptance. The above road trauma is accepted by, and then I send it for the regional manager to sign off. Yes, we were intentionally being provocative here, but the reality was that you kind of go, we know that is going to cause death and serious injury. It's just somebody has decided that getting a little bit more capacity through that intersection is more important than the death and serious injury community. So we need to really just boil it and distill it down to sort of some in-your-face type thinking. Now, of course, we didn't manage to do this for long before some very high-level people came and told us to stop that, and that we're not thinking about all of the all of the responsibilities of a road authority and how it's a balance, and you've got to do this, and the benefit cost ratio has been done to show that it's very beneficial to get those people through a little bit, and all of that stuff. But the safe system really says that we don't make that compromise. We don't knowingly trade off human life and health for transport gains. Anyway, just one you might have found interesting there. Back to the slides. I was just about to show one that I like. Again, it's slightly for fun, but there's a lot more thinking to this, right? Traffic signals tend to operate traffic better, okay? Because you can manage traffic, you can get more through and the like. And so that's often the reason why they're ripping those roundabouts out and replacing with traffic signals. But can we still retain some of the advantages of the roundabout, but get the capacity through it with something like this? There's the cut-through roundabout. Now, this is an artistic impression. It hasn't been built, much to my disappointment. I genuinely think if you're at ground level, it wouldn't be as crazy looking as it is. But anyway, nonetheless. But the idea is that a vehicle approaching this would see the infrastructure slow down, wake up. We'd have improved angles then of different crash types in a lot of circumstances. You get lots of capacity through. It's going to have generally pretty good safe system alignment. I like this kind of thinking from the principals perspective. There's a lot to work through in operationalizing something like this, obviously, but just the principles I like people thinking through. And there's lots of little mock-ups of this sort of stuff, trying to get some of that benefit. Now, a few of you put in there, why don't we do some raised platforms, raised intersection, or the like. Now, certainly when I started my career, if I'd said, why don't we do vertical deflection at something raised on that arterial road with buses and trucks and 21,000 vehicles a day, I would have been told to sit in the corner and think about what I just said. It's craziness. That's the highway. That's the arterial road. You don't do that. Vertical deflections for your local streets and the like. But we've sort of altered and shifted that, and we're much further advanced in our thinking these days. And we can understand that it's not necessarily a local speed hump type thing we're creating. It's a platform. It can be shallower. We can target it to whatever speed we want. And that's what the region came up with for that site that you were looking at. Now, this is, they sort of pondered it and their budgets and the traffic flow, the unbalanced flow, and a few different things. And they decided signals were appropriate, as a lot of you did. But they weren't willing to sort of say, well, maybe if we build these signals, they'll operate differently to all those other ones that there's death and serious injury. Maybe people will take more notice of this red light. No, they're realistic. They said, we're building it. We're going to leave a residual of death and serious injury by doing this. We're going to certainly improve road safety, but is there something we could do to try to help it? And they said, look, can we slow the bullet vehicles down a bit? These are the bullet vehicles, right? These are the target vehicles, the ones coming out, the ones coming in, right? They don't need to be slowed down because they're not doing the damage. They don't have the speed to do the damage in this scenario. We just slow the target vehicles down and try and slow them down to a speed. They went with a 50 kilometre per hour was their aim to slow vehicles through the conflict point here due to the right angle crash possibility and the safe system threshold speeds. Pedestrians and cyclists, you'd like it lower. There's fairly low volumes of those. So they maybe haven't got us up full alignment with safe system principles, but they're doing quite well. Anyway, they built that. There it is. You can see there, 50 kilometre per hour. Advisory speeds, not regulatory speeds. There they are again, just slowing those vehicles through. I was out there with a colleague doing the post-opening road safety audit of this one, and just a couple of photos that just really make me happy. This one is one of them. The vehicle is braking on the approach to a green light. It's and people sometimes get angry at that. They're like, that's just inefficient, and this is like, if it was a roundabout, we wouldn't have a problem with people braking before it, would we? No, for some reason we're just attuned to want to drive through there at speed and switched off and the like. So I love that. I love this one as well, where we've got the shift in the dilemma zone. The dilemma zone, for those people who don't sort of use that term, is the point in time and space where you the light's gone orange and you don't know whether to hit the brakes or hit the accelerator, go through or stop. It's officially called the dilemma zone. Google it, have a read up on it. It's great stuff. Some of the evaluations are showing this sort of condensing of the dilemma zone, because with the vertical deflection, the raised platform, people are just more inclined to stop. So that's some good road safety wins as well. And I'm just loving seeing these emerging around New Zealand, around Australia, and we certainly know the Hamilton one that's out there. Gordonton and somebody will pop that into the chat. It's just sort of outskirts of Hamilton. Went out there with Simon Crowther a few times in the design period to have a look at it. It's just beautiful. This is good stuff. This is excellent stuff, and there's lots of investigation going into it. So I just love the idea people are now thinking about trying to address some of the severity at these large signalized intersections. And here's another example of one, again, making me super happy. This intersection used to be a roundabout. The roundabout was being pulled out under a current congestion easing program. Okay, replaced with traffic signals. But a safe system assessment had to be undertaken. The safe system assessment showed this would make things worse. And as a result, the project team implemented raised platforms to at least bring speeds back down and make it pretty much as good as the roundabout for vehicles, and probably better for pedestrians with some increased control. This road carries 53,000 vehicles a day, and this road carries about 27,000 vehicles a day. This ain't stuff for low volume roads anymore. We're talking big arterials, and I've just read an evaluation, which hasn't been published yet, of 7 of these, 3 on this road with 53,000 vehicles a day, and some massive other ones. 27% reduction in fatal serious injuries compared to just the signals, and 60% reduction in fatal serious injuries for pedestrians with the installation of the raised platform. Massive. So I'm excited that New Zealand is going gung-ho at this. I think it's what we need to do. There's some good guidance. The Victorians have got some guidance. Road Design Noto 307, have a flick through that. That was some early guidance available. And then Hamish Mackey and crew, New Zealanders, very wonderful New Zealanders, did the Austroads report, effectiveness and implementation of raised safety platforms. There you go, I've got the Hamilton one right on the screen, front cover. Good stuff, good stuff. Max, anything that I need to deal with?
Lots of good comments coming through. We had a really cool example of a roundabout that was kind of like a turbo roundabout installed in Leeds, which there's a link there, but I might send it to you later on, Ken, to have a flick through. I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, we might take a couple of minute break here just to let people have that stretch. It's a little past halfway. Just 2 minutes, quick fill up of the water, stretch, and we'll get back to it, and I'll have a little look at that in the chat.
Good idea.
All right, Max, what do you reckon? Back into it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Some great commentary there. I like the cut through roundabout in the UK there. It's a beauty. For those who clicked on that link, thank you to those who sent it. Okay, so have a look at that report. Freely available to download from Australia's website. It's got some great stuff in there if you're interested. And I know many New Zealanders are now really working hard to refine the design characteristics of these and sort of deploy them in areas they're going to get good benefit.
Just noticed on that front cover the two different supplementary plate sizes, the 50 and the 50.
Wonder why that is. One's in the middle, maybe trying to make sure we don't block sight lines too much or something. Yeah. Tell you what, Julian will probably know if there's a reason. Okay, so another one, I won't spend anywhere near as much time on this one. It's just sort of highlighting another good one, which is to look at this example. There was high speed, it's a high speed intersection, 100k roads. They had reduced speed limit to 80, and they were sort of thinking, how do we reduce the risk here? It does have a bad crash history as well, and thinking about roundabouts, and then the costs going sort of north of $8 million because of it's a telecommunication exchange building on telecommunication exchange building on that corner, obviously land constraints, and the price was just going out of control because reverse curves on the approach, on each approach. So the region's sort of saying, well, what can we do here? There it is. You can see it, and there was lots of ideas around what we would call supporting treatments. So they're good road safety treatments, but they're not going to get us that massive step change we want. So things like a dedicated right turn, want to do a rural intersection activated warning sign, the old RIOs, good stuff, good road safety treatments. And if you can't afford something more, definitely be putting these in. But they really wanted to push hard on this one. There were some of the crashes that were occurring. And so they said, well, what about that idea of a smaller roundabout? And could we get some value out of that? And they sort of designed up what they refer to as a compact roundabout for this location. Didn't do reverse curves on the approach, so that's sort of the chicaning of you in to slow you down. They had a very small roundabout, tiny little roundabout in the middle, and then a concrete apron around it. Raised intersection here, did some raised platforms on the approach to slow people down. Shallow things, not very big, violent ones. Some detailed design on it. Some good, good analysis on ramp grades. And I can send you the detailed design of this if you're interested in the very specific detail. Then they built that one. There it is, bit of drone footage, and you can see there the nice sort of slow them down a bit, slow them down through. And I've shown a few of you this before as well, but operating really, really well. See the tiny little island there. So a large vehicle can still get around here. It just sweeps over and tracks around and comes through. And yeah, we've just finished some design guidelines on compact roundabouts, which hopefully Department of Transport's going to release soon. They're doing what governments do and scratching their head and pondering a few little intricacies. But yeah, another exciting one. Let's try and get our safe system outcome at lower cost. And yeah, it's a good one. Max, quiz it up. Have we got a quiz, or am I going to ask the question?
Let me consult my quiz manual here. We do have a quiz, which I'll launch right now.
Thank you. Remember, you're not being marked on the quiz. It's just one to ask a question. What does it say then, Max?
True or false? Traffic signals are not safe system. Is it true? Is it false? Is it an unintelligible question? A little bit of a cheeky answer there, Ken.
Yeah, unintelligible meaning, you know, what basically saying, Ken, it's a stupid question. What are you even talking about?
What are you trying to get out of that? Julian asked a question there as well, which I was just checking up on, but is it still technically considered a compact roundabout? Is it still within the Austroads Guides to Road Design diameter range?
No, it's smaller than that. Yeah. It jumped out of Part B. It's yeah. So it's extended design domain out of that. And a lot of the debate going on at the moment was around, you know, can we make this the default? And then you've got to prove why you go a bigger roundabout, which is kind of fun because if you know you're going to be delivering roundabouts for about half or less of the price, we get a lot of benefit, but there may be a little bit of interest. Anyway, all right, how do we go there, Max?
I've nearly got everyone submitted, so I'll give it 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and I'll end the poll now. And I'll share the results with everyone, see how we fared. Over to you, Ken.
Yeah, so this is interesting spread there. It's an unintelligible question for 2 reasons, really. One reason is that the idea of this binary safe system, that is safe system, that is not, is I don't use that language. I say it's got a good alignment with safe system principles or bad alignment with safe system principles, because the pure safe system, what is pure safe system is sort of, I don't think we've got anything that's there. Maybe some, you know, completely closing off roads and those sorts of things, but you know, it's alignment with safe system is one. The second is you don't have any context here. And it's not about the signals as such. It's not about their feature, the signals or the roundabout or the wire rope or the speed limit or the, you know, it's the context of it coming together with energy management and kinetic energy thresholds and likelihood of crashes and severity and exposure. You know, it's a package. So I'll give credit though to people who said true. Maybe they were thinking a certain context, the high speed with no extra features, and the false. Maybe you were thinking, well, you know, you can do that. Absolutely, you can use traffic signals, and they can be very high safe system alignment in the right context. So there's a little bit to it. But one thing I was really keen on is that people do not come out of this course thinking somehow that traffic signals are not safe system and we must never use traffic signals again. That's not what we want people to think. We just want people to analyze the energy, the likelihood, the severity, the exposure, and the safe system assessment does all that for you. Thanks for that, Max. That's excellent. Oh, hang on. Did we share the results? We didn't.
Yeah, I already closed it.
Oh, you already closed it?
Yeah.
Max, a step ahead of me. And now we're fighting over who's stopping the sharing.
I might get you to follow up with Julian's question as well. So are mini roundabouts extended design domain as well there, Ken? Do you know?
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't think there's any guidance in 4B on mini roundabouts.
Yeah, I was thinking of checking the LATM Austroads part, but I'm not sure where they'd fit in.
I'll send some stuff. I'll find something which we've got all that all defined at the start of those guidelines. This is what we categorize as a mini. This is what we categorize as a compact. This is what we categorize as fitting within the design domain of, you know, what is generally accepted, or Part B really, and just how they fit. Thanks, everyone. That's good. Let's talk about lane departure. So here's a road, highway out there, running up the spine of New Zealand, potentially 100 kilometers per hour, separation via a barrier line or a overtaking line. Got some sealed shoulders, with roadside there, some trees in areas, some cleared areas, occasional access points, pretty much straight, goes on for about 400 kilometers like this. Without knowing anything more than that, what type of crashes do you think are presenting death and serious injury on this road?
Everyone seems fired up with head on, and we've got runoff road there as well.
Yep.
Runoff head on at the bend, overtaking, falling asleep and running off the road. Certainly seeing a trend here. Runoff road from boredom.
The crash type is certainly runoff road and head on. Well done. See, we know what we're dealing with, don't we? It's not a surprise. Yeah, there are little bits that increase risk, you know, like the kink in the road, a little bit more risky than the straight bits, but the straight bits have plenty of death and serious injury. And you know, when the when is there more head-on than runoff road? Well, again, the New Zealanders doing good research there. I think they're showing it's around 6,500 vehicles. AADT sort of becomes more head-ons than runoff road, because you leave the road, it's, you know, usually people sort of fall asleep, they drift off to the left because the road's sort of shaped that way for drainage often, drift off to the left, wake up half off the road, pull the wheel back in a big shock, as you would imagine if you're traveling at high speeds and you're off the road, and you wake up, and then they shoot across the road, or start. It's just this chaotic event of yawing, which is where your vehicle slides side to side. Sometimes they slide off that way, sometimes they shoot across the road and they hit other vehicles. Sometimes they do fall asleep and drift into the opposing lane. Yeah, so just lots of chaotic stuff happening. Lost my mouse there. And we just have huge abundance of the road network in New Zealand like that, don't we? We've got all the state, a lot of the state highways, that have these sorts of characteristics and high speeds. And what we're going to do to try and fix those is very challenging. And there's a lot of network. I just remind you that side impact with an actual pole or a tree, power pole, a tree or the like, happening at anything above sort of 30 to 40 kilometers per hour is pretty likely to result in death or serious injury to the occupants of the vehicle. Here's one of a predicted 60 kilometer per hour strike with pole, just to show you the violence and the energy in something like that at about 60 kilometers per hour. It's just staggering. It's such a violent transfer of energy. So what we know around this is that as we clear the area of those fixed hazards, poles, trees, culverts, unprotected culverts and the like, we see that the number of object hit crashes goes down, of course, as we're removing these objects. The number of rollover crashes starts to go up, though, because there's more space for that yawing and out of control and potentially rolling. And what we see is an interesting sort of pattern that shows, as we create the old clear zone, as it's called, a clear zone, and I'll talk about what the new Australia's Guide to Road Design Part 6 says. A clear zone, that's an area clear of any of these fixed hazards. We see the more you clear, it comes down, and then it starts to sort of asymptote out there at around 4 runoff road casualty crashes per 100 million VKT. Now, VKT, we'll give a prize to whoever can tell me what VKT stands for first. And a question Who was in first, Max?
I've got Lachlan, vehicle kilometre travelled. So
Yep.
give it to Lachlan there.
Yeah, good, Lachlan. You're on the prize.
Well done.
On the prize board. Yeah, vehicle kilometres travelled. So it's trying to sort of make a measure of the relative risk, taking into account the amount of vehicles going past an area. But it's a good like-for-like comparison there. We see there somewhere around 4 is where it sort of, but we're not actually addressing this residual. See, we're doing a good job though in these first about 4 meters of cleared area. That's bringing risk down beautiful. But you're not going to get there to that elimination. I'm not going to go through a whole lot of these. There's some of the data behind it. Got some references. It's a bit hidden by that QR code of some of the research behind this. But what I suppose I want to say is that a wide clear zone or cleared area, free of hazards, is not necessarily a safe place to be. It's a safer place to be than one with fixed hazards. But we are going to see hazards, vehicles going beyond any sort of cleared area and rollovers potentially occurring. So wide clear zones are not the highest alignment with safe system principles and are very hard to achieve because we can't be going around chopping all the trees down in the roadside. Just that's not what we do anymore. And it's very expensive. So what we need to be looking at is what else can be done. And I probably wouldn't show this slide 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, 15 years ago, because road safety barriers came with quite a few risks in their own right. I mean, we had challenges with vehicles vaulting over barriers, spearing. The end terminals were kind of okay, but there was lots of issues. They didn't absorb too much energy. But with what barrier technology is doing now, and it is amazing, it's actually a safer thing to have a flexible barrier system at about 4 meter offset from edgeline, 4 to 6 meter offset from edgeline. It's safer doing that than providing a cleared area of out to sort of almost even out to about 15 meters, which often you just can't do anyway. So barriers are just amazing for passenger vehicle crashes in terms of the way they absorb energy, the way they're designed, the sophistication of the end terminals and their absorption of energy, testing requirements. It's amazing stuff. And I'm not going to talk for days on that, but we won't. But it's just to say that you will see that idea of continuous barrier systems more and more into the future. So Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 6 used to, a few years back, basically tell us to design a new town bypass looking like this. Big sort of area, get rid of these, free of hazards, big, wide, cleared, median, cleared area, and yeah, you have your trees just outside the clear zone. Probably wouldn't have truck rumble strips. That's not something that's in there, although that's not a bad one to try if you've got concerns about trucks leaving the road. But we just know that there's going to be death and serious injury, lots of it built into this. And this one was built probably 20 years ago. There's lots of people who have fallen asleep, run off the road, hit trees, made it to the other side of the road, hit other vehicles. So luckily we've sort of advanced a bit from that. I talked to you about pitch, roll, and well, I didn't talk about pitch, roll, and yaw. I talked about yawing being that side to side slide and exposing the side of the vehicle as they leave the road. There used to be a bit of a common misconception a lot of the time that people sort of just fall asleep and drift off the road and then they hit a tree. That sometimes happens, but it's more common that they're sort of awake at a point and then the yawing starts to happen. And again, lots of sort of detailed information about some of the research about how they're what they've found in terms of distances vehicles are traveling, hitting hazards. and whether they've attempted to brake or not attempted, or attempted to recover, and how that plays out. So I've put some of that into your notes, but I don't expect you to go into that detail. It just might be something you find interesting. The new Austroads Guide to Road Design Part 6, Road Design, Safety and Barriers, has some really exciting ways to think about roadside hazard management. I like it a lot. I like aspects of it a lot. The one thing, though, I do need to flag with you is that the definition of exposure in this document is different to the definition of exposure in the Safe System Assessment Framework. So if you're somebody who's using this document a lot and has your network NRRIT, what does that stand for? Network Roadside Risk Intervention Threshold Levels and things that come out of this, and you're working down that track and you've got your exposure sorted in this one. Unfortunately, we've used a different take on exposure in this one compared to the Safe System Assessment Matrix. So you're going to have to recalibrate your thinking a little bit. I apologize. But really, let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. The highest alignment with safe system principles for these mid-block sections at high speed for passenger vehicles is just going to be barriers, continuous flexible barriers. It's the bumper bowling of roads. People fall asleep, they leave the road, they hit a barrier. Okay? They drift into the other lane, they hit a barrier. And we put this sort of chart in, and it talks a little bit about sort of where things are better and worse alignment with safe system principles. I wouldn't worry too much about that. We do a lot of IRAP star rating, OSRAP star rating. There's Kiwi RAP star rating as well. And we see here the 4-star road. So this is like your fridge or your washing machine, how it gets a star rating for energy efficiency. There's star ratings you give for roads, 5 stars as well. This big road reserve here where we've got, big wide median here and the like, that's 4 stars. But this more narrow constrained one with barriers, that's 5 stars. So that's pretty exciting. You get a safer outcome, less land to acquire. So continuous barrier systems, and then just great examples springing up in New Zealand out of the Safer Roads program and the like, sort of implementing similar cross sections and just achieving wonderful results. Jump through those. But of course, the details of the design and the considerations are critical, and you've really got to be thoughtful, not just of the continuous barrier system, but the access points, the ability to pull over. And this was a surprise, I think, in some of the different rollouts that we were doing. Really, it's a low volume road. The risk of this is so low that somebody would be struck, and we know that the big risk is leaving the road and hitting that. And you've got to get your deflection space for the barriers, and so it sort of gets designed somewhat like this. But the community just goes absolutely berserk when we do this, and they don't have the space to pull over. So again, in the design, considering a whole raft of things, and you've got lots of wonderful designers there available to assist. And I want to end this one on a specific product, and I have no interest in this product in that sense. But what I love is its energy management, and I love that people are innovating and thinking around how do we manage energy? How do we manage energy with the infrastructure? This is a Raptor cushion, and so those who don't know what a Raptor cushion is, that's what it kind of looks like. It's a device that wraps around a pole, and it's sort of got a honeycomb center, so it crushes a bit. Its real super benefit is that it rotates on impact, and it redirects the energy. Kind of like a martial arts where they say, move the energy of the punch. I've never done martial arts in my life, but I watched the Karate Kid. But so the idea is that the vehicle comes off, the angle of that moves the energy along, keeps the vehicle moving along and slowing down rather than an abrupt stop. And this was just a forensic crash investigation of an old vehicle, 4 young male occupants, 2 in the morning. You know, it's got all those things that we shake our head at, but they happen so often. And, you know, we're going to work on lots of elements of the system to try and stop that happening. But what can we do with our infrastructure? They came through and it was a roundabout. So, you know, I just sung the praises of roundabout so much. I mean, I suppose other vehicles would have slowed down, been looking around, and they were probably very alert coming through. They lost control. They hit the power pole, which had the Raptor on it. Estimated speed was 92 kilometers an hour, 91 kilometers an hour. Knocked the power pole down, but then redirected them as well. And all survived, minor injuries, leading a normal, healthy life. So I think it's a pretty amazing idea. And again, I'm not going to get caught up in the specific product and, you know, what it's approved for and the like. But what I want you to just think is, like, how do we manage energy? How do we try to make things more friendly? Is there another quiz, Max, or not? I might have deleted that at one point.
Oh, but good news to you, Ken. There is. We do have a second poll. I'll launch it right away. True or false? Sealed shoulders improve road safety. Same selections as last time. Is it true? Is it false? Or is it unintelligible to be asking that?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing well for time, Ken.
Well, it's going to give us good time to introduce the exercise, Max.
Did you know that the Raptor cushions were made in New Zealand or invented in New Zealand?
Really?
There you go.
Not. I have a hello dog.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Male's here.
Yeah. I have a particular gripe at the moment with utility providers not wanting to have these around their power poles for all sorts of crazy reasons. One being that, you know, we can't access to maintain, or, oh no, there's something that runs down there and it could overheat if something. And, you know, often we see power poles hit and the utility provider comes back, replaces it, and they replace it with something stronger. They go, oh, we're going to go concrete this time because it knocked down the wooden one and plonk it back in the directly the same spot. So it's just sort of that preservation of asset is so blinkered to the safety responsibilities we have with these sorts of things. So I think it's, wouldn't mind a little class action on a utility provider just to liven the industry up for their responsibilities under road safety. But Stovey poles, yes. So they're a nasty one. So it's sort of got the metal and then the concrete in it just to really make it strong and very narrow. So you're concentrating the energy. Yeah, not a fun device.
In the poll there, everyone has submitted. Oh, the other one, sorry. And I'll just click share on the results. Majority there saying true. Ken?
I would say true. I mean, sealed shoulders we know are great in terms of reducing the likelihood of crashes, not doing anything for the severity. So again, you don't want to say that they're not a good road safety thing. We would call them a supporting road safety treatment. The barrier is the primary treatment because it's going to absorb the energy as well, reduce the severity. Unintelligible question, maybe. Again, we gave you no context, so I'll accept that because you didn't really know the context of it. But yeah, they generally going to improve road safety. Beautifully done, Max. Let's jump in and tell these wonderful people what they are going to have to do as their assignment, because Yep. And
Sure.
I will lead into explaining it. I don't know if you've got Moodle up and running there.
I do. I can share my screen if you want.
Yeah. The lead in is that this should be a fairly quick exercise. I don't want you cancelling your weekend plans here, and you've got a bit of time to do it. You should find it fairly easy, and Max will show you where it is and then talk you through a bit of it.
All right, everyone. So I've got Moodle up here. Module 1 we completed on Wednesday, and you can see the webinar recording has been uploaded there. The quiz is there, thanks to those that have already completed it. Today we also have a quiz, Module 2 quiz, but as Ken alluded to, there's also an assignment. So I'm going to click on the assignment, which will take me to a new page and also a document. Click on open, and you can save this to your hard drive. Oh, those are my trivia questions. No one look at that. Don't want any spoiler alerts for next week. Let's have a look at the assignments. Taking a little while to load. Okay.
Are we now like that, Max?
No, doesn't seem so. It's just gone grey.
Okay, I'll jump into Moodle myself. There we go.
I'll try this in a different way. Sorry for these technical difficulties.
It's all part of the fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's live action.
All right, I'm going to take over.
Okay, I'll leave it to you.
I'm going to share screen now. Screen 2. Okay, so we're seeing Moodle, and you're all nice and comfortable in there. And of course, you've got the quiz from today, and you jump into assignment 2 there, as Max showed you, and it's a Word document and downloads beautifully. And hopefully mine opens up, or it could be some Microsoft bug around the world. And
Mine just flashed open as soon as you took the screen, so I'm okay at this end now if we need.
Is it the way it's interfacing with it's the way it's interfacing with Zoom. So
too technical for me. I'll take the screen again.
Yep.
Apologies, guys. We're nearly there. So here's the assignments.
Beautiful.
We've got a few steps that we've tried to spell out, make it as clear as possible. What we're after you to do is select an intersection. It can be anywhere you like. It can be your closest intersection to where you live. It could be one that you have a particular safety concern about, or maybe one near work that you just don't like, or just a random one. And then we're asking you to fill out the information below, and I'll get to that in a second. You've got to inspect the site via Google Street View. And yes, these are the questions that we'll be addressing on the page overleaf. We just ask you to insert your name, so chuck your name there, and also a link to Street View, just so when we're reviewing, we can also just have a quick look and make sure that you've identified features that are consistent with that environment, and also just making sure that things that you're touching on things that we would also bring up in these types of reports. So let's have a look at page 2. We're asking for exposure, likelihood, and severity. So we've got factors for each of these, and we're asking you to fill in this table. We're asking for a minimum of 1 factor and a maximum of 3 factors relating to exposure, likelihood, and severity. And you can just dot point those. So we don't expect long paragraphs or anything like that. We just would like some quick and easy dot points, things that relate to the factors that are related to exposure, likelihood, and severity. And in the second row here, we have changes. So any treatments that you could potentially put in place there that would reduce or increase the, oh no, it does say reduce, sorry, reduce the exposure, likelihood, or severity. So anything that could be implemented there that would make that road safety outcome a little bit more favourable in terms of those exposure likelihood severity. So that's why ELS has been such a big part of today's conversation and on Wednesday as well, because this exercise will hopefully begin to put all that narrative together and actually make it give you a practical example of how you can apply that learning. Once you've completed all this, just save it to your desktop, save it to your local drive, and you can upload that to Moodle. And for those that haven't done that before, it's just a matter of going back into this window here, and at the bottom there's an add submission, and you'll get the prompt there to upload a file, and you can upload that. We'll be able to review it, provide some commentary on it, and also grade you on it as well. We have...
Oh, sorry, Max. I was just going to, as you stay there, and we're going to grade you on it. We will grade you on this one. You're predominantly being graded on your ability to categorize things correctly. Okay. We do ask you to put that link so we can have a look and things, but we're not going to be super critical on whether that was exactly the right treatment to do or not, and those sort of things. It's really, this is an exercise in your ability to say that influences exposure, that influences likelihood, and that influences severity. And yeah, so just remember that. And yeah, you can do it from your desk, street view. Could be the intersection outside your window, so you could just look out the window for a while and go, yep, that'll do. Yeah, very free and easy on that. And Max, when's it due?
Due on Tuesday. The idea is so we can have a bit of quick review of it on Wednesday, and perhaps Ken can chat through any common issues or common things that are coming up, and yeah, just give you an opportunity to have that conversation before the next module. Yeah,
great. Thanks, Max. And yeah, at the start of next session, we will we'll dive into somebody's site, and we'll have a look. So if you want to volunteer for that for next session, be ready, and we'll do that. Max, there was a question that came in there just asking us to quickly go through the quiz, and so I'll just quickly, how to do a quiz. I'll just quickly, hopefully you're seeing Moodle, and I've got myself in here now as a student, so I've never actually done this before, but let's see how we go. So quiz, I'll do quiz 1 because you should have already done this. So you'd go and you'd attempt your quiz, and then you would answer your questions, you know, whatever you answer, and go through them all, and then you get to the bottom and you finish your attempt. Now, I believe once you click on it, you cannot change it. Oh, maybe you can. No, it might be all right. So you're just clicking on those drop downs, and off you go. I don't think you've got that check option. I think that's for me because I could check that I got the correct answer. But answer them all, answer, and finish your attempt. Okay, any other questions or comments in there, Max, we need to deal with, or we're going to give people a few minutes to finish their quiz and start their assignment?
I reckon let's get everyone involved in it now. So we've got a few extra minutes after today's module. So it'd be a good opportunity to get started on the quiz, get started on the assignment. Angela is asking just for an extension to Wednesday, considering it's a long weekend. And I'm feeling fairly generous. Are you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the reality is you've got to finish it before you get your certificate for the course. But we do like you to do it as quickly as you can in order to calibrate your thinking on exposure likelihood and severity. Because when you go to do your assessment task, the bigger assessment task, if you don't have that calibrated right, you're going to fail the next one. So, but yeah, I mean, we're a bit flexible with the time there, so don't worry too much about that. But it's a 10-15 minute exercise at most, I reckon.
I hope everyone enjoys their long weekend and stay safe, and look forward to trivia next week with you all.
Yep. Logging a little early, and yep, you can all knock off now. Workday's over. Thank you.
Thanks, kid. Me too.
Yeah, well, not you, Max. No.
See ya.
Farewell.